Operating Systems Advanced Concepts, Part 1. This is Part 1 of a two-part series. We're going to cover OS layout, basically the look and feel of the operating system, as far as the desktop is concerned, the system tray, the taskbar, okay, things of that nature. We'll talk about File Explorer and how we can configure certain areas of that and some things that we need to be aware of. We'll talk about the control panel and system applets, and basically a couple key areas that can help us configure our system and make life a little bit easier. We'll talk about some command line tools that we can use to diagnose things, troubleshoot things, view things on the network, okay, some things you may not be aware of. And we'll also talk about environment variables and how they can help us as well, either to determine a computer name or person who's currently logged in or things along those lines, basically things we can use when we're involved in scripting or needing to automate certain processes. Alright, so let's go ahead and start out with an OS layout. Okay, so when we very first install the operating system, you're presented with this glorious desktop full of nothingness. Well, you can easily add icons to your desktop, and you may be wondering what happened to like my computer and my documents and things of that nature, Internet Explorer. Well, you can get those back simply by right-clicking on your desktop, going down to Properties, and then clicking on the Desktop tab, and then click on Customize Desktop. Now from there, we have our desktop icons that are by default unchecked, but we can simply check those to bring them back. Hit OK and OK, and now we have our icons back. Now we can also add additional ones, obviously, like say we want to add our favorite web browser. We can just basically either drag it from wherever it is and create a new shortcut for that. We can also add buttons that we use frequently down here in the quick launch bar, and we have additional ones sitting here. Okay, we can add that and turn it on and off by going to our toolbars menu, and we can turn on a toolbar for media player, for a language bar, for Windows search. Okay, whatever applications, you may install some additional applications that give you a few other toolbars that you could use. So if you wanted to use an iTunes toolbar as an example, or you can turn on Windows Media Player. Okay, these things would show up in the toolbar if you have space for it. Okay, since we're running a limited size desktop here, we don't really have the additional space. So that's why I have those turned off to begin with. But you can in fact invoke those at your convenience. We can turn off the quick launch bar if we want to conserve some space and have more room for applications. And we can basically lock the toolbar or unlock the toolbar. If it's unlocked, you can drag it and give yourself like a double-decker layout, so you can have additional items here. Okay, you can drag it, you can move it to other sides. You can put it on the right-hand side, up on top if you like. Okay, whatever's your preference. And then once you have it where you like it, you lock it down, and that just makes sure that it can't be moved again. Okay, so just so we know, this area down here is obviously the Start button. This will be our taskbar, and this is our system tray. Now these items in here are applications that are currently running. Now they're not necessarily the only applications that are running. If we expand this out, we see we have other things that are running, but if they're not used frequently, they become hidden. And you can adjust that and decide which things are hidden all the time or when they become inactive. So if we right-click on the Properties section of the taskbar, we can go to Hide Inactive Icons and then customize that. So it gives us a list of things that could potentially be running in the system tray, and then we can give it an actual status. So we can say always hide, hide when inactive, or always show. Okay, so typically I like to hide things that I'm not using, simply so I don't have this gigantically long row of icons sitting in my system tray. They're all still there, but they're just not there to clutter up space and take up space from me. Okay, now if we look at File Explorer, we can customize some of the things, the way it looks and feels and things of that nature. So let's take a look at that. If we go to My Computer, open that up, and then go to the Tools drop-down list here and go to Folder Options. We can customize whether we want to show the taskbar on the side here or give it the classic style. We can choose if we want to, when we browse folders, should we open them all in the same window or should we open a new window each time? Okay, so that's a matter of preference. We can also do a few things such as show hidden files in folders, display the full path in the title bar. We can hide extensions for known file types, launch folders in a separate process. This occasionally is a good thing to have if you have enough system memory, simply because there are occasions when File Explorer will hang for some reason. Well, if you have 3 or 4 windows open, and you actually forcibly terminate one of those processes, then all of them terminate. But if you launch each folder in a separate process, then you have the ability to selectively terminate those without killing everything at the same time. One that kind of gets people by surprise, kind of sneaks in the back door, so to speak, is all the way down at the very bottom. When you very first install the operating system, this is checked, this simple file sharing, and this makes setting up NTFS permissions and setting up customized permissions a bit of a chore, if not impossible, just from the graphical interface. So I usually uncheck that. All right, so that's checked by default. I go in and uncheck that. That way, when we open up a file or a folder, and I'll show it to you here, let's say I go in and I create a new folder. Let's just call it test. When I right-click on that folder and go down to the properties, that security tab is not there. Okay, so that kind of gives you a bit of a challenge when you're trying to assign NTFS permissions to a folder. Okay, so I just went in and checked off view simple file sharing or use simple file sharing. Now, if I right-click on the folder and go to properties, you see the actual security tab is no longer there. Okay, now if you're new to the operating system, let me just take a moment and step back and explain what these icons and what these folders actually are. The My Documents folder is a location for you to store all your documents in one place. So it is a per user folder. So each user on the system, everybody has an account here, will have their own My Documents folder. Now that's stored under if I go to my C drive, under Documents and Settings, I can click on that. Each user has their own folder. So in that folder, there is a My Documents. So that's, again, specific. We also have such things as the user's favorites, their actual desktop icons and so forth, Start menu, and then this ntuser.dat is that user's specific portion of the registry. Okay, we'll talk about the registry more in just a few moments. Okay, so back to the desktop. My Network Places is what was called Network Neighborhood in previous Windows operating systems. So My Network Places basically gives you all the places that you either have drives mapped to or shares on the local machine. If you right-click on My Network Places and go down to Properties, it'll bring you right to your network applet, so you can basically look at your internet connections and your LAN connections, okay, things of that nature. Internet Explorer is obviously the internet browser, and then any other icons that you have on your desktop. You can also take note that we have here this little icon down in the lower left-hand corner, this little arrow. That denotes that this is a shortcut. This is not the actual application. It is a shortcut to the application. Okay, so when we create shortcuts, we can assign hotkeys to those shortcuts. So if I right-click, go to Properties, I can click on Shortcut Key, and in this window here, I have Control Alt and F, if I want to use that one as an example, and that will be the shortcut key that I can use to then invoke my or my Firefox web browser without having to actually go out and double-click on it myself. So some people prefer to use shortcut keys or hotkeys, if you will. Others like to use double clicks or single clicks, depending on how you have it set up. So it's really a matter of preference. Okay, so let's go ahead and take a look at our control panel, and we can get to that by going down to our Start button, up to Control Panel. Okay, I already have it open here. And basically the control panel gives us a bunch of applets and utilities that allow us to go in and adjust certain things within the operating system. We can go in and add, remove programs. We can add new hardware. We can basically set the date and time, change our display settings. Okay, go in and actually change the actual desktop location, look and feel, the screensaver. We can change our appearance, the color, the scheme, effects, if we want to set up clear type or standard, things along these lines. And we can change the actual screen resolution. We could change the way our monitors are set up, and also the color depth. Okay, a couple items of note are the administrative tools. So if we double click on that, we have access, or shortcuts, as you'll notice from the little arrow icons here. We have access to a few things that we need to be aware of, one of which is our event monitor or event viewer. If we click on the event viewer button, that takes us out to a Microsoft Management Console, or an MMC, of which the event viewer is a snap-in. Okay, it's a component. So it gives us a number of logs that we can look at. So we can look at our application log as an example and see step by step what things are actually taking place. So you'll notice we have a couple errors in there. Errors are not necessarily uncommon, even in a brand new system. So if you see them, don't think automatically that the world's falling or the sky's falling. But what it does mean is that it's something that needs to be looked into. So if you double click on one of those errors, it tells you basically a description of that error, and it may give you some useful information as to where to go find more information on the web. Sometimes it is, sometimes it's not. It really depends. But it basically gives you date and time, what category, and the source of that error. Alright, so there are three different types of entries in this event viewer. We have informationals, which are